Hello. Well, we told you so. Um, Here we are to bring you our latest reactions to the government's latest press conference saying that on Thursday, at midnight on Thursday, we are going into a national lockdown. National because I say national like this because it's not really national, is it? Wales and Scotland and Ireland aren't really following us. Um, for 4 weeks. If you don't know who we are, our names are below. We are Hanna and Eastwood. I am Sam Hanna. He is Harry Eastwood. And we are gonna try and make sense of what Boris said. Not an easy task before us.
Make sense of nonsense.
Exactly.
But yeah, it is quite incredible to think that less than 3 weeks after the tier system was introduced, and I made a prediction on this channel that in a few weeks it would be implemented, the national lockdown would be implemented because of the failure of the tier system. And here we are, about to go into another lockdown, despite batting off sage advice, Keir Starmer's suggestion. As late as this Friday, we had Dominic Raab on the airwaves being questioned about the national lockdown, and he batted off every single question and said, no, we're going to stick with the regional approach. It is the best way of doing it, and that we've seen how successful it is in France and Germany. And I thought, hang on a minute, they've just gone into a national lockdown, so I don't think there's anything successful about that.
I have to say, before we get into the discussion, we are live across Facebook and YouTube for the first time for the podcast, and we want your opinion on one question tonight. In the comments, let us know, should schools and universities remain open? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we will try and include as many comments as we possibly can.
Yep, absolutely. But yeah, this is another example of dithering and delaying, and it is a complete mirror image of the first wave, the first lockdown. They locked down 2 to 3 weeks too late, and they think that costed around 25,000 lives, that mistake. One of the most unconscionable mistakes that they made in the entire first wave was their delay into lockdown, and they were peppered on it for ages over the summer, and yet they have made exactly the same mistake. They haven't learned anything, have they? Some people gave them the benefit of the doubt, didn't they, in the first wave, and said it was new and unprecedented. I mean, I personally think there was enough evidence there in the first wave to have locked down earlier. But people were quite generous and said, actually, it's unprecedented. No one knows what the right approach is. But now, this time, they know what the right approach is. They know the mistakes they made in the first wave. So there is no excuse. It is just staggering, the incompetence. But yeah, the incompetence even goes as far as the fact that last night they couldn't even schedule a press conference. So how the hell can you expect them to run a country when they can't even specify a time for such an important national announcement or England-wide announcement where everyone should be watching? And by not specifying a time and changing the time, it results in people missing it. And I ended up missing it. I sat down at 4:30 to watch the press conference, and then it turns out, because I thought it was going to be at 5, but then they moved it to beyond 6 o'clock. They still didn't say when. They said sometime after 6, and then they said sometime in the next 15 minutes. And by which time I was busy and I couldn't watch it. So catastrophic planning and communication.
And
Horrendous.
many people were frustrated. I for one had to cancel my plans. I had plans to launch my album yesterday, with a live show on Facebook. I at 3:30. I saw that the announcement was at 4 and thought, well, nobody's going to be watching
Well,
me at
exactly. I
4.
thought 4 was an odd time.
Nobody's going to be watching me at 4. People will want to see what Boris has to say about lockdown, because obviously the rumours were spreading and the rumours were growing that a lockdown was looming. So I decided to push it back to today, only to find out that my plans could have gone ahead yesterday afternoon. And the government have just shown their incompetence.
Absolutely.
Because when you can't arrange a time for a press conference to the media, what makes you think that you are the right sort of people
Exactly.
to run a country?
It is staggering. I mean, it was almost verging on taking the piss, to be honest, because, I designated time out of my day to sit down and watch it, because I thought this is, a crucial announcement. I need to know what's going on here. After all the leaks to the media that went on, that's another scandal. That the media will leak this information by someone in the cabinet, who I'm sure, I don't think we'll ever find out who that was, but clearly one of them leaked a load of stuff, because on Twitter, before the press conference itself, Laura Kuenssberg and Robert Peston seemed to know exactly what was going to be said, and they were outlining what Boris was going to announce, basically, before he'd announced it.
Yeah.
It's so unprofessional. It's corruption.
And then you have the rest of the media who probably didn't get the memo of what was going to happen. Almost building rumours to scare people into belief. We've seen over the whole pandemic the whole idea of media scaremongering people into believing certain things about the pandemic. The pandemic has been absolutely awful to this country, to the world. But what the media are spewing, certain newspapers, for example, isn't 100% true, and it's trying to manipulate the reader into believing that it's true. And you have people now believing that the coronavirus is a conspiracy.
Absolutely. It's dangerous.
It was created in a lab in Wuhan. When you give me the proof that A, the coronavirus doesn't exist, and B, that coronavirus was created in a lab, we can talk. But at this point in time, these are conspiracy theories that nobody has any proof for.
And another point is, what you gain by having that mentality of thinking that this is all a hoax, we're going to defy the rules, we're not going to abide by this. We're not going to get back to normal if people are thinking this way and are messing around and are not following the rules and taking it seriously. The easiest way we can get back to normal is that everyone abides by the rules and the government get a handle on it. That's the way we do it.
It doesn't help when you see Donald Trump in the White House get coronavirus, go into hospital, then a few days later he comes out saying, I feel great, I've never been better. It just makes the whole thing look absolutely stupid, and makes it look completely overrated and over exaggerated, which it isn't.
No.
When you look at the UK and the US death tolls, it's absolutely appalling compared to the rest of the world. So how can you take it as a joke?
Well, people are often comparing it to like other causes of death. So they're saying that cancer deaths are higher, that sort of thing. All of these other conditions that aren't being treated and stuff. But the thing is, things like cancer, yes, they should be getting treated, and that's another scandal. Because it's down to the government to be ensuring that people with other medical problems also get treated, and they're not doing that. So that's a major problem.
No,
Um,
when you've got the health secretary trying to almost threaten the public into obeying what they want by saying if you don't obey our rules regarding COVID-19, we're not going to treat cancer patients. That's an absolutely appalling thing
it's a scandal.
to say, and I think they should be ashamed of themselves. Matt Hancock, um, whoever's idea it was to make him health secretary,
Dominic Cummings,
deserves a
probably.
round of applause because they've obviously pulled off the biggest hoax in the world in 2020. So yeah, it makes no sense.
No, none at all. Right, we get on to explaining what the next lockdown consists of then. I
Yes.
believe you've got the point.
So we will now break down, or we will attempt to break down, what we are and what we're not allowed to do. Remember to get those comments in. Should schools and universities remain open? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll get onto that debate a little bit later.
Another key question I would like to ask people is, do they think that 4 weeks will be enough? Because I'm very sceptical at this point, having left it this long, that 4 weeks is going to be enough to get the R rate below 1, which is apparently the parameter for releasing into the peer system. The R rate has got to be below 1, and at the moment, it's nowhere near 1. So I don't believe that 4 weeks and having schools open and universities open is going to succeed in bringing down the R rate to below 1. Others may think otherwise, but even Michael Gove said today in an interview, he hinted that it may be longer than December the 2nd.
Whereas Boris is saying that after December the 2nd, the restrictions would be eased and we would go back into a regional tier system. So it goes to show that communication in the government is about as clever as and about as capable as a chocolate teapot.
Exactly. In fact, I think it would be a better product, to be honest, a chocolate teapot.
And if I could just say before we go into the lockdown rules and restrictions, we all saw lockdown coming. We were predicting it on the chat. We've been predicting it on the channel for ages, for some time. I was given this analogy today because I said everybody saw lockdown coming, but there was no warning. And a good friend of mine, who shall remain nameless for obvious purposes, said this whole lockdown is like when an older relative dies. When an older relative gets ill, you know that they're going to die. But when they do actually die, you think, oh, well, I didn't expect it to happen this soon.
Absolutely.
It's the same with lockdown. Everyone knows, or everybody knew that lockdown was coming. Nobody knew when it was coming. And this lockdown has crept up on us. Like a ninja.
Yeah. And it does, as I say, it doesn't help when they've spent the entire week this week completely dispelling any plans to impose a national lockdown. I mean, they've just spent a whole week wasting time by pretending they're not going to do it in order to make it look like Keir Starmer wasn't ahead of the game and that they were making the right decision. And then the next day, after Dominic Raab said all this crap, we end up hearing that we're going into national lockdown. And I suspect that the reason that there was no, I can't believe they didn't even explain why the press conference was delayed so much. But I suspect that there were quite a lot of disagreements going on, because I reckon a lot of people didn't see it coming, even in the cabinet. And so they were obviously trying to reach some sort of agreement.
Nobody in the cabinet saw it coming because Boris, even in his press conferences, said the tier system is the best system in the world. We are going to tackle the virus this way and no other way. No lockdown. It would ruin the economy. And yet here we are, ready to ruin the economy.
It's a disgrace, complete disgrace.
And as we go into our points on what we are and what we aren't allowed to do, can we just say it was announced yesterday he announced yesterday in his press conference that these may change because he's going to debate them on Wednesday, which is absolutely ridiculous. When we are going into lockdown on Thursday. To Mr. Johnson, hello again. I like to address the Prime Minister every now and then. Hello, Mr. Prime Minister. Well done. Give yourself a sticker. You've done a good job. First of all, so we kick off our lockdown rules and restrictions by saying people are being told to stay at home unless they have a specific reason to leave, such as work, which cannot be done from home, and education, which continues our argument. Should schools and universities remain open? I don't think so. Let us know what you think. One thing that really ticked me off about his press conference yesterday is he's gone back to using the same phrase that he used in the first wave. Stay at home, save lives, control the virus. And I turned around to the TV and said, oh, shut up. because
it's just as if we are back to square one.
We are back in spring, it seems. And
that's what angers me most, that the sacrifices that we've all made for the first half of this year seem to be completely for nothing now. All the damage to the economy, all the damage to people's mental health, all of this has been for nothing because of their inability to create a proper exit strategy from the first lockdown and implement test, trace, and isolate. And I'm going to be banging on about this a lot tonight because this is the solution.
And we know how this is going to work. We know exactly how this is going to work. We're going to have the stay at home, save lives, control the virus, or control the virus, save lives. And then you're going to be told you can go out for longer than an hour. You can ride your bike to work, but don't ride your bike to work. You can get the bus to work, but don't get the bus to work. You can drive to work, but don't drive to work. Work from home, but don't work from home. And all of that. And then you're going to learn the dance of hands, face, space.
Oh, that's right. Head, shoulders, knees and toes again.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, face and space. Something along those lines. And it's absolutely preposterous. And then we'll come out of lockdown again, and pubs will reopen, and gyms will reopen, hairdressers will reopen. I don't know how you feel because you won't be able to get a haircut now. Well,
I was thinking perhaps in the next. I've still got a few days because they've given us till Thursday. I think the queue could be 3 miles long. So I don't know. I might just try tomorrow so I can get something.
But all of this will reopen. We'll go a few months, and bang, Boris will be back on our TV screen saying we need to go back into lockdown.
And I have an answer to how we can avoid that. Test, trace, and isolate.
Exactly. How bloody hard is it?
It's not rocket science. You didn't need a crystal ball or to be some high-class professor to work out that if you test, trace, and isolate, you isolate every case and all those associated with that person. You lock them down, and everyone else can go about their daily life. So this is the whole point. I wanted to say to all the lockdown skeptics out there and all the people that say lockdowns aren't a solution, I agree that lockdowns aren't a solution, but what they're needed for is to bide you time and to get the case numbers and R rate down to a level where you can actually operate test and trace, because at the moment there's too many cases to do it properly. And then also they need to fix test and trace system itself, because that isn't working. So that's what they need to use this time for. That's why lockdowns are useful. They're only useful if you back it up afterwards with a fully functional test, trace, and isolate. So, just to clear things up, people who think that lockdowns don't work and all they do is just damage the economy. They do damage the economy, and they are very disruptive and a very
We
blunt
are in
tool.
one of the worst recessions after the first lockdown. We are in one of the worst recessions. And yet Boris comes out saying we're not going to go back into lockdown because it would be an economic disaster. We know, we knew that. And yet a few days later, we are in lockdown again, and he's announced his press conference, as you will see from our points, are as clear as mud. People are being told to stay at home unless they have a specific reason to leave, such as work which cannot be done from home. Harry obviously is a working man. I am not yet. And it looks like my search for a job continues. Into another to be continued into another lockdown.
To be honest, this is like a parody at the moment. We're in episode 2 of the trilogy, aren't we?
Yes.
So there's probably going to be a third one.
Oh, don't say that. But you don't know if you're allowed into work.
Well, this is one of the points I want to raise. Let's finish talking about the lockdown point. Let's just go through all of those, and then I'll say what the problems are, and work is one of them.
Secondly, we have people are also allowed to leave home for exercise, as in the first wave, medical reasons, food and other essential shopping. Will that be the same as Wales? Who knows? And providing care for vulnerable people or for volunteering. So, just a little loophole for you, because we all know the government love a loophole.
Oh, they love it.
If you see a police officer, if you are out for more than an hour doing your exercise, or for your food or essential shopping, and you see a wonderful police officer who says, "What are you doing?" Just say, "I'm going to volunteer." Don't explain where you're going to volunteer, because it doesn't say where you have to volunteer. It just says for volunteering. I'm going to volunteer. Thirdly, meeting indoors or in private gardens will not be allowed, but individuals can meet one other person from another household outside in a public place. But how will they know? If you're walking in a two, if I meet a female, how do they know that we're not living together? They don't.
There's no proof.
Apart from the
Unless
fact,
they tell you to carry your passport.
apart from the fact, if I'm seen with a female, something.
I was going to say, I've been so lucky. I might be worth it time, actually. If I can get a girlfriend there.
Point number 4. Next slide, please. Pubs, bars, restaurants, and non-essential retail across the nation will close. But, and there's always a but, takeaways. So any pub can say, we're now offering takeaway, and click and collect shopping can remain open.
Yeah.
Leisure and entertainment venues, including gyms, will also close. But construction sites and manufacturing workplaces remain open.
Now that's the same as before.
That's exactly the same as before. Who knows why? people are still allowed to form support bubbles,
This is different.
and children can move. And this bit is the same as the first wave. Children can move between homes if their parents are separated. Clinically vulnerable people are asked to be especially careful, but children are not being asked to resume shielding.
I can't contemplate this particular rule. The vulnerable people are precisely the people that should be shielding.
Exactly.
So why are they saying to those groups, don't worry about shielding so much, but they're telling everyone else, you must shield. Complete nonsense.
But then, anyone who loves football as much as myself will also have heard the news that the Premier League, the Champions League, and all other leagues will be continuing, meaning that English leagues such as Manchester United, in English teams such as Manchester United, Liverpool, Manchester City, who are partaking in Champions League and Europa League this season, can travel abroad as early as this week to play international games.
Yeah,
And yet, because they're in their bubble, because they're in their little football bubble of a team, they don't have to isolate and they don't have to quarantine.
No.
Why? They could be bringing the virus back into the country. They then go home. They see their partners. They see their children. They give the virus to their partners and their children. Children go to school. Partners meet up with friends. And again, the virus just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Come on.
It's just infuriating double standards that make no sense whatsoever. And I just can't understand how there's not one person who sits around that cabinet table and thinks, no, sorry, this doesn't make any sense. We can't do this. We've got to think of another way of doing it. How can they possibly look at that and think that's going to work and that's acceptable?
Because it's the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And to be honest, we asked the question why lockdown came now. And part of me thinks we've gone into a lockdown because the news has gone viral, but it's taken the focus off of Marcus Rashford and the Tory MPs voting against.
That's right. It could be a diversion strategy.
Against free school meals. It's a brilliant diversion, but it's a diversion that the government need to know could potentially destroy the country's economy.
Well, yeah. But there's no doubt about it. This lockdown's needed. I mean, it really is. In terms of the numbers, there's no other thing. There's no other thing we can do at this point because they've left it this late.
They obviously showed the data before Boris said we're going.
Honestly, those graphs are so misleading.
Yes, and the southwest was actually not the worst.
But it's getting bad.
But it's getting bad. The whole country is getting bad, and the only way we can tackle it is by doing a lockdown. But we can't afford to do what we did in the first wave, where we keep extending it and extending it and extending it. We need to know how long this is going to be. And again, we ask the question, is 4 weeks really enough?
I don't believe so. I really don't. I think if they'd implemented it a few weeks ago, like it was recommended by Sage and Keir Starmer, then we might have had a chance of exiting fairly quickly, and it wouldn't have had to have been so harsh. We've got to the point now where it's verging on the sort of numbers we were looking at when we went into lockdown in March. We know how long that took to get the R rate below. So the key thing here is to use the time to get test, trace, and isolate forward. And then, even if we've still got a few thousand cases a day, if we implement test and trace and isolate at that point, then we can release everything. The other problem is getting people to comply with the isolating part. And what was majorly missing from Boris's briefing last night was telling the public that this is the way we can get back to normal. There was nothing like that.
You must do it.
He should say, if you want to get back to normal life, then the way we do it is that if you are tested positive with coronavirus or you're told to isolate, you isolate. And then we don't have to sacrifice everything else. We don't have to close down the entire country. We can keep things, everyone can go about their normal life. That's the way we can do it. So if people were given that hope and optimism that we would get out of this by going along with the strategy, people will be more likely to comply. But at the moment, he hasn't made it clear what the future strategy is and how we're going to avoid the lockdown and release cycle, which is what we're in now. So he really needs to communicate better with the public.
That leads on to my next question for our viewers. Would you break the COVID rules for Christmas if in lockdown? We've seen Victoria Derbyshire announce that she would break the rule of 6 if that rule is still in place for Christmas. Would you break that rule at Christmas to see your family? Would you, Harry? Would you?
Well, it's difficult to say because obviously my situation is quite different from everyone else because I have a very small family anyway. And my uncle and auntie, who we usually have spend Christmas with, are very nervous about COVID, and are meticulous with the rules. So they've already made it clear that they don't want to be meeting anyone inside around Christmas. So I think for us, it's just going to be the three of us anyway. Just, so it's not really going to be something for me to consider. But it depends, I can understand that obviously it's one day out of the entire year. But what we don't want to do is reverse any progress that we've made in reducing the number of cases in the R rate and putting members of our family that could be vulnerable in danger. So that's the cost-benefit analysis you've got to do. What would you do?
Well, my question is, yes, it's only one day, but would the virus stop for one day?
One day it won't.
Would it be like Germany Germany and England in the First World War, where they call a truce and they all have a wonderful game of football? Are we all going to be friends with COVID for Christmas Day, and then all of a sudden, Boxing Day, we're all going to be back in battle with it? I don't think so. Again, we need to be taking this seriously. I have quite a large family.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking. It's different for you. For me, it's not. I don't have to contemplate thinking about breaking the rules because our situation is well inside the rules anyway, as it is. But I agree with you. I do think that if you risk one day with large family meetups, I mean, as you say, you've got a family. You could have as many as how many people would you normally have at Christmas?
Well, I have 4. There are seven in my main family, and then three of my sisters have partners, so that goes up to 10. And then I've also got 4 nieces and nephews, so that's 14.
So basically, the entirety of them come to your house at Christmas.
Yes.
So actually, that is quite a serious situation, isn't it? If you've got 15 people in there. I mean, none of them are particularly in the at-risk category, but all you have to think about is who they will then be seeing after Christmas Day,
Exactly.
and that they may be asymptomatic and be carrying the virus and spread it. This is the problem.
I think the only way we can do it, if we are going to do it that way, if we are going to break the rules for Christmas Day, for that one day, if we are going to spend that one day as if it was a normal life, we need to be prepared to spend 14 days in quarantine. Isolation.
Or you get a COVID test, but good luck with that at the moment. You can't get a second COVID test.
Well, you can't get a COVID test unless you go into Boots and pay £120 for one, which gives you a result in 12 minutes.
Yeah. Well, there is a little bit that Boris added on the end. Did you hear about that? About the new test they've got?
No.
Apparently, there was a mention of these new rapid tests that they've got, which will be able to give you the result in 15 minutes. Sounds like a boot thing. But apparently they're ramping that up on a mass scale. That would be extremely handy.
It would be handy.
No doubt.
It would be very handy and almost believable if we didn't hear this whole thing in the first lockdown. In the first wave, we heard it all before. We're paying for a vaccine. We're paying for tests. We're paying for PPE. And yet here we are, 7 months later, in the same boat.
Absolutely. Mad.
Up a very tiny creek without a paddle.
Yeah. Well, we're in a sinking ship at the moment.
Exactly.
With no captain, unfortunately, because Boris Johnson is not a captain. He's not even a prime minister.
I was having a conversation with the same friend yesterday, about Conservative leaders, because obviously, myself being a Labour supporter, I have to say, the Conservatives have had some very good leaders. Margaret Thatcher, Winston Churchill, Theresa May. Theresa May was a very good leader. It's just a shame.
She just got through the Brexit situation.
And nobody in the Conservative Party liked her. They just threw her under the bus. But then again, you've also had some terrible prime ministers, such as David Cameron, who created the Brexit farce anyway. And
Problem was he was good up until then, I thought.
And our current leader, Boris Johnson, who is currently training to be a clown after he resigns, or after he's kicked out. Because
I mean, he is, in my view, the worst prime minister this country's ever had. I can't see how else you can argue it, really. There's nothing good to say about what he's done. But then you also have to look at Labour and say that actually they've had some diabolical party leaders recently. They've had Ed Miliband was pretty ineffective. And Jeremy Corbyn was so radically left and could never possibly be prime minister, so he was never going to win the election. And to me, Keir Starmer's the first politician of recent years that I've actually thought, hang on, he's got something about him. And he's not particularly charismatic, he's not a massive character, but he is a serious and logical politician to me. And I think that's what we're crying out for, to be honest. I mean, as I said before, I don't call myself a Labour supporter. I say I'm pretty central, if a bit to the right, to be honest.
But I have to say that the shoe can be on the other foot, because Labour have also had some terrible supporters, as you said. Tony Blair was once described as a Tory in Labour clothes. Because he were in the days of Margaret Thatcher, he agreed largely with what Margaret Thatcher said about privatisation, and other various stuff, rather than agreeing with his own leader, despite being on the front bench of the Labour Party. And he went into the Iraq War and created a mess for the UK and the US, thanks to George Bush Jr. Because George Bush said we're going in to fight Iraq because of 9/11, and Tony Blair turned around and said, "We're your allies. We'll go in behind you. This is a really good idea." Which, well, we all know. Gordon Brown had a face like an old leather boot.
That is exactly it. I've got a couple of Gordon Browns in the cupboard downstairs.
I don't want to know. And like you said, Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn, we slate the government over how they've handled COVID, but I have to say, and we'll draw this to a close soon. I have to say, if Jeremy Corbyn was elected, he wouldn't have done any better. Jeremy Corbyn is the UK version of Joe Biden. In the fact that he's old and he hasn't got a clue. And seeing the news the other day that Keir Starmer's actually stood up to the ex-leader and said, actually, we don't agree with anti-Semitism, you're out. Keir Starmer, if you are watching, we will give you a round of applause, because that takes guts. That takes massive guts.
But he's got to do something drastic, isn't he? Because at the end of the last election, the Labour Party was completely buried, with no possible way of recovery, it looked like, until Keir came in. And you saw, I remember seeing his first interview, I think, and I thought, hang on a minute, he sounds actually quite good. And he's proved himself to be quite good. I mean, I've been a bit critical of him over the pandemic, and I think he's supported the government a bit too much. But recently, brilliant. I mean, they called him Captain Hindsight. People kept calling him, including Boris. Kept calling Keir Starmer Captain Hindsight. But in this instance, he was Captain Foresight, wasn't he? Because he called for a circuit breaker 3 weeks ago. So you can't ever call him that anymore. But anyway, this wasn't why you called. We've got to return back to the lockdown discussion on it, because there's a few key points I want to raise.
But how long? It was 2 or 3 weeks ago that Wales and Scotland announced that they would be going into a 2 to 3 week circuit breaker. And at the time, Keir Starmer said, actually, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Do it over half term. Extend the half term over 2 weeks. So schools are closed for 2 weeks. Close pubs, bars, restaurants, or as Boris says, restaurant. I've noticed he doesn't actually say restaurants. He says restaurant.
No, I can't understand a word he says, so you've done well to pick that up.
Gyms, etc. And yet the UK didn't follow, or England didn't follow the rest of the UK and said, no, we are fine on our own, sod off and do your own thing. And yet when the big guns of the European Union say, we're going into lockdown, we're going into a 4-week lockdown, it's going to be hard, but it's the only way forward, Boris Johnson comes out with his tail between his legs saying, this is a really good idea. I wish
despite saying it's a terrible idea for the last 3 weeks.
I wish I had this idea sooner. Thank you.
Yes, jolly good idea. But anyway, I have a few points to raise about the whole lockdown situation, and a few things, a couple of questions I have. Why wait until Thursday if the situation is as grave as it is, and it is grave? Why are they waiting? Why are they announcing? I mean, obviously, I think they meant to announce it on Monday, but obviously the leak happened. They had to announce it on Saturday. Why are we leaving it until Thursday to implement it? Surely this is going to make people go absolutely mad in the next few days, making the most of freedom, meeting up and having huge parties, going out to pubs and bars, mixing. I think this is actually going to worsen the situation we're in before we've started.
I have to say, my parents went shopping yesterday afternoon to pick up the bare essentials: bread, milk. I think they picked up some yogurts, some veg, salad, etc. And the queues were apparently extortionate. Yep. As soon as people have heard the statement Boris to make lockdown announcement today, people go,
must get loo roll.
And my mum said she was talking to someone in the queue who said she had got down to 8 packets of toilet rolls, so decided to go to the shop to pick up some more.
Why though? Why go mad? They know from the first wave that you're still allowed to go shopping. And it's just selfish and unnecessary to be buying in bulk all of these toilet rolls and certain items. Pasta was another one that went mad in the first wave. You couldn't get any pasta. They started nicking the gluten-free one, which I was pissed off about because I couldn't get pasta either.
Well, I noticed. I went to Morrison's just before the week before we went into lockdown in March, and it was absolutely appalling. You had people just bulk buying stuff like Pringles. They were just picking up trays of Pringles and putting them in trolleys, and sugar and yeast, because apparently when you are in lockdown, all you can do is bake bread and cake.
Yeah.
It's absolutely shocking.
It
Why?
Really is.
Why do we feel the need to panic buy when we hear the word lockdown?
It makes no sense whatsoever. And as I say, it's selfish beyond anything else, because you're depriving other people of items that they need. Yes, toilet rolls can be considered an essential item, but that doesn't mean you have to rob them from everyone else and they have to go out for their 1 hour of exercise and grab a load of leaves to you.
Use your hand. Use the back of your hand. That one shows social distance.
What else can you do then? Like, if people are being this selfish, like, it's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And it just sums up the stupidity of the nation, I'm afraid. That people have been very, very stupid during this crisis. And that's sort of the secondary problem, as well as the government, the issue with the government.
I have to say, in what I think should be probably the final point.
Yeah.
If any sort of sector has been buggered over by this second lockdown, it's the arts.
Oh yeah.
The arts were just getting back to normal. Pantos were being announced over the Christmas period, and that was seen as the way to get theatres back up and running. I know for a fact, Harry, you went to see Paul Zerdin at the theatre or at a entertainment venue last weekend. The arts have been massively buggered by the government, and it's absolutely appalling. I will be doing a live concert, raising money for the arts next week called #Save the Arts, because we are myself as a musician, I feel the government can do better, can treat us better.
By the way, we do have a couple of comments on the Facebook. I don't know whether you've seen those.
No, I haven't.
Shannon Lucas says, I personally think that they should shut schools. They talk about bubbles, so I have a bubble of 6, then send my kids to school and they have their bubbles there. So really, we are all just one bubble because we are mixing. And that's a very good point. I completely agree with that. The thing is, the problem is with school is that I understand the point that kids need to be in education after the rocky year they've had, because obviously it's been massively disruptive and they will miss out on more education. So I understand that. But schools are COVID hotspots. And this is why it was so significant when Keir Starmer presented the idea of a circuit breaker to hold it, including half term, because that's a natural break in the school calendar, which would have allowed you to have naturally had a break from school and reduce the R rate. So this is the problem now. We've left it too late. So I think they're going to have to complain.
Another comment, Shannon Lucas. Sorry, we haven't got the comments from. We haven't been getting the comments from the Facebook.
Feeding through the Facebook. No.
In regards to breaking COVID rules for Christmas, Shannon says, I wouldn't break the rule. Yes, Christmas is a family thing, but I'm sure people would rather just go by the rules. Makes Christmas the best you can for next Christmas, rather than breaking the rules and risking your life and maybe not being around for another. That's
the reality.
And Paige Bothmer says it was all the bleach.
Well, I'm glad Boris hasn't suggested that so far. At least we haven't had that.
Yeah, at least we haven't gone as far as saying let's inject.
I just want to say one final point that I think is missing from this second lockdown. Why are the borders still open? This is a point that I raised during the first wave, when it emerged that 20 million people came into the country during March and April in the first lockdown. No one is going abroad at the moment. I've seen that because over half term the entire country has come down here to the southwest on holiday. No one wants to fly on a plane at the moment. No one wants to go abroad. So why keep the borders open? Keep our population in, stop others coming in from other countries. Do the New Zealand and Australian model. We're an island. I think that would drastically help as well.
I actually sang a song today. Obviously I did my album launch today, after the whole shambles of the delayed announcement yesterday, and I sang a song by Fascinating Aida called White's Blues, and the last line is, let's face it, Britain's finished, so I'm moving to New Zealand. And I added where they tackle a zero COVID. I don't think anybody got the joke, but it's true. Britain is finished. I think people will be thinking about emigrating to New Zealand because, let's face it, Britain, New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern has done an amazing job.
Absolutely.
Of tackling COVID. So I think,
and people have been accusing her of being dictator-like in what she's imposed. But it's, and no one likes these things, but it's worked. You can see that they've reaped the benefits because they are now virtually back to normal life, except that they can't do international travel. But that's a price worth paying if you're able to open the rest of the economy and everyone else's liberties. So to all those people who are slagging her off for being a dictator. I'm afraid that is what's required to get a handle on a pandemic like this with no vaccine. So, congratulations to New Zealand. I wish I was there right now.
Well, I have family in New Zealand, and we see them every Saturday for a quiz, and I can tell you this: they are a lot happier than we are, at the moment, because they are free. They can go to church. They can go to work. They can do what they like. And yet today, I went to my last church service actually in the building, because church has only been open for 6 weeks, and yet we've been told we can't hold public worship anymore,
No.
in the building. We're being told we can't see family, because they're not in our bubbles. This is a farce, and how long is this farce gonna go on for?
Well, we just have to. I'm just hoping and praying that they finally get the message that test, trace, and isolate has to be up and running, functioning at a proper capacity before we release this lockdown. It's essential. I'm sorry. If it takes longer than the 4 weeks, then it's got to take longer, because otherwise we are going to be going in and out of lockdowns. As you say, there doesn't seem to be an end point. This will provide an end point. So please, Boris, explain to the nation that you've got to do the we will fix, test, and trace and isolate, and then it is down to you guys to isolate. And if you do that, we will control the pandemic, and everyone else can go about their daily lives. We can open everything up, and we can have a bit of fun again. That's what he needs to say.
And I going back to the schools and universities, just a final point on that. I think if we're in a lockdown until the 2nd of December, possibly longer, who knows? If schools shut the week before the Christmas holidays is due to begin, and runs until the week after New Year, so doing a 4-week Christmas holiday rather than a 2-week Christmas holiday, that would
It's
be
an idea.
It's a brilliant idea. It's like extending half term. Schools closed for 4 weeks. Cleaners get in to deep clean the building after the schools are closed and before the schools go back. And I suggest we do that more often. We extend half terms to 2 weeks. We extend Easter holidays to 4 weeks, until we actually tackle the virus, because we can't afford to keep schools shut completely. Children's education is absolutely vital, and you can't deprive a child of education. But at the moment, it seems like schools are COVID hotspots. Kids are coming home from school. Students are going off to university, and that's how it's being spread. Because you've got students from Manchester coming down to Plymouth, and Manchester and Liverpool are the two biggest hotspots in the country. So why are we allowing that to happen?
Absolutely right. I mean, there's actually been a clear correlation when they were doing the tier system. All the major cities that were being placed into tier 3 areas, or were highlighted as at least tier 2 and having an explosion of cases, all had universities. And you could actually pinpoint that it was concentrated around the universities. And that's how it started in Exeter. Exeter, it all started at the uni, but then actually it gradually moved into the actual city as well. So Exeter became quite a hot spot for it. But you can see how easily this happens. When it starts from a university, it gets into the town.
So I think we should
Yep.
bring that to a close. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us on Facebook at Hanna and Eastwood Get Real, or my individual page, Sam Hanna. Bit of shameless promotion in here. Instagram, Hanna and Eastwood Get Real,
You can
or
send me a friend request if you like.
Sam Hanna Comedy. Twitter at Hanna_Eastwood and at Sam Hanna Comedy. And we will get this right today. Like, subscribe, follow.
It's all on your side. That's
It's all
alright.
on my side, unfortunately. We will be back on Tuesday night, live on Facebook, live on YouTube, to bring you the build-up to the US presidential election. I'm actually really looking forward to it.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't want any of these people to be in the president of the United States, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun talking about it and deliberating
I mean,
it.
after
And what a
tonight,
perfect way to crown off a disastrous year. That's what I want.
exactly. After tonight, I think it's going to be it's going to be a great episode, and it's going to be something not to be missed. And I think get your thinking caps on, guys. Because we want you to let us know on Tuesday night. Election playlist 2020. In a world of the end of the, where we celebrate the Armageddon, where we celebrate the end of the world, what songs should feature on our playlist? And what songs should feature on the COVID playlist? Head, shoulders, knees and toes.
That's obviously got to be there. We've got to have We Didn't Start the Fire. That's got to be there.
Stop
Particularly for the
buying
US
all
election.
the toilet rolls. I'm fed up of using my hand.
500 Miles can be in there for Dominic Cummings as well. That'd be good.
Is this a way to Barnard Castle?
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway,
So many absolute winners there. But yeah, please do let us know.
let us know. Before
And please comment on the video live as well to give us your thoughts when we build up the election.
And do make sure, like Harry said, you watch on Tuesday night. We will be live on my profile on the Hanna and Eastwood Get Real Facebook page, which if you look at the scroller below, it is just plain and simple Hanna and Eastwood Get Real.
And on YouTube as well.
And on YouTube.
So please give our channel a follow as well. We've got lots of content on there.
And make sure you like, subscribe and follow to make sure that you see all of our brand new and exclusive content as and when it comes out. And we will also be live on YouTube. So if you prefer to watch on YouTube, then make sure you join us there.
We are taking over social media, so you can watch us however way you like.
We will be like Russia, controlling state TV. We will be on every channel.
Sorry to disrupt your BBC One schedule.
This is
This
us.
is the build-up to the election. You're stuck with us for 3 hours. Yeah.
Hopefully we won't be on for that long.
No, I just realised that as soon as I did. I thought, hold on there. I've got to fall asleep for 3 hours.
Anyway, I've been Sam Hanna. He's been
And I've been Harry.
He's been Harry Eastwood. It's good night from me.
And it's good night for me.